A very pleasant evening to you out there. Thank you for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. My name is Joyce Jakarta and we are live on Facebook and YouTube at ECWA Television. Tonight on National Talk, the Chief Observer of the European Union's Election Observers Mission, Barry Andrews, at a press briefing noted that Nigeria's 2023 general election was exposed to systematic weaknesses as a result of shortcomings in the law and electoral administration, which he noted hindered the conduct of well-run and inclusive elections and damaged trust in INEC. Meanwhile, the presidency, in a statement through its special advisor on special duties, communication and strategy, Dele Alake, rejected the EU EOM conclusion of the 2023 general elections, alleging bias and an intention to impeach the integrity of the 2023 election. Alake described the general election as the best organized election since 1993, describing the EU EOM's finding as unfounded. On National Talk tonight, I have Dr. Arome Moses Okori to discuss EU's report on Nigeria's 2023 general elections, as well as the emergence of the 10th National Assembly principal officers. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Good evening. Thank you.
It feels good to have you, Barrister, despite your busy schedule.
My pleasure.
All right, let's go straight into the conversation. The EU's report is... the report came sometimes last week, but what is actually making headline is the reaction by the presidency calling the report unfounded, saying it is biased and all of that. But I would like to quickly get your view. What is your take on the EU's report?
Quite frankly, I believe that the EU report is fair, and many Nigerians can relate with that report because we witnessed firsthand some of the shortcomings in our electoral process during the process of the elections that were held both in February and also in March for the presidential election and the National Assembly election, and also the governor and state houses of assembly elections. Undoubtedly, we observe some flaws. The report talked about systemic failure. One clear example is that the expectation of Nigerians were quite high that this time around, all they talk about beavers, bimodal voter accreditation system that was hyped by INEC, the transmission of results from polling unit into the National Electronic Database, and the ability also for individuals, real-time members of the public, to access the INEC portal to retrieve those results, became a fluke. And many Nigerians actually express faith in the ability of INEC to keep its own part of the bargain by fulfilling its promise in line with the Electoral Act 2022. But that did not happen. So that was a major slap on the Nigerian electorate. And if the EU raises a point that makes the point that based on the observation, that was a major flaw, I think they cannot be faulted on that observation because many Nigerians can relate with it. So that's one key area. And then, of course, you saw that even in terms of preparation for the elections, I can tell you from the point of view of my own personal experience, particularly during the first election, the presidential elections, found out even at the 11th hour, many of the presiding officers and INEC officials that were supposed to be responsible for the conduct of the elections, particularly those from the university community, many of them were not trained, many were not even aware until the night of the elections that they were performing certain functions in terms of electoral conduct. So these are things that are so glaring, and having spent so much money and so much time, 4 years preparing, I mean, these excuses are untenable. So it flies in the eye for government to say, oh, that report is a sham, it was a biased report, this, that. Well, many Nigerians do not expect them to say otherwise, because the federal government is the beneficiary of that flawed process.
But again, Doctor, the federal government actually, beyond rejecting, I'm talking about the presidency now, beyond rejecting the report, they highlighted the fact that the EU only had about 11 analysts in Abuja and then 40 election observers cut across the 36 states. And do you think this is really enough to gather empirical data that will speak for the whole election? Because that is the point of argument of the presidency, saying no, you don't even have enough to cover all the polling units that we can even take your data. Going by this report, 11 analysts and then 40 election observers, do you think it's still worthy to take this report?
With all due respect to the managers of the federal government information, from what I read on the EU platform, I can't remember the figures now, the number of election observers that were sent were certainly not 40 from different countries. There were over 100.
So this is just a figure to justify.
Yeah, so I read it on the EU website. I read it, and I read the report. Besides, you know, sometimes we just remain in this corner of the world and we keep deceiving ourselves. In this day of information technology, you can sit down somewhere in the US and get to know whatever is happening in every corner of Nigeria. Besides the physical individuals, persons that they deployed, would they know what other strategies they had adopted?
That's true.
To get this report? And what I'm saying actually is that, you know, when you quarrel with a report, you try to pick holes in them. Oh, you say, oh, this one was not done, that one was not done. Okay, if the EU report was favorable, even if it was one person that did the observation, federal government will say, oh, fine, your report was correct. But in this case, you know, when you quarrel with the report, you have to justify the grounds for your quarrel with the report. But like I said, we are all here in our little corners. I didn't know to go anywhere. Right there in Jos South, where I sat, I understood from my own immediate environment how this thing works. And you can imagine, on the day of the election, many of us went to the polling unit in our numbers. But you can see in terms of the crowd that was there, in fact, the number I took to vote was over 1,000. I think that election that day even ran right into the night. So you saw that, look, there were hitches here. And you are here, federal government, defending this thing. But INEC itself admitted that there were glitches.
True.
So what are you talking about? So I think that, for me, the government should own up to the realities that are facing us, so that we can get ourselves better prepared for future elections. I give an example. During the Yar'Adua administration, when he came in, he recognized that the process that produced him as president was flawed.
True.
And he set up a high-powered committee to review the entire process. And that process eventually bettered what now became the 2010 Electoral Act. So, and then you now see, because the EU also alluded to systemic and legal challenges, bottlenecks. You can imagine, from 2015 till 2019, the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, and his advisors kept playing hide and seek with the enactment of the Electoral Act. Because the Electoral Act, as it were, is a product of the mindset of those who are in power. And they try to skew this in a way that will favor their retention in power. Why did you wait from 2015, 2019? Several times the National Assembly will present this Electoral Act to the government for passage into law. They will not. Until the 11th hour. And then everybody starts jumping up and down, trying to see, oh, what does this act say? How do we comply? And with all the excitement that greeted the act, particularly the aspect of electronic voting, some of us were involved in advocacy, going around telling people, even on media channels, oh, this time around, with 2022 Electoral Act, the game will be different. Voter apathy was substantially reversed because people expected that, oh, this time around is not going to be the same. And on the key point that you promised, you failed. And then you turn around as government, you are defending it. I think it's unfortunate.
You know, one thing that the EU's report captured is the fact that it's systematic weaknesses, and then it was linked to shortcomings in the law and even electoral administration. What was promised to Nigerians that gave hope in the whole process, people like becoming enthusiastic, looking forward to the election, the introduction of technology and all of that, were things that, like you said earlier on, Nigerians can relate to. Operational failures, the issues of glitches. We saw how that in some states in Nigeria, like there were violence, we saw the rancor, we saw people beaten, we saw how that the likes of Jennifer, that was almost on every newspaper, how that her eyes were punched and all of that, coming out to just reject a report without bringing an empirical analysis of your own point of view, was something that a lot of people frowned at. The likes of Labour Party as well as PDP felt vindicated because this was what they were actually fighting. They said this election is flawed. It is marred by irregularities. There are a lot of malpractices, and that was why they told the part of the court, expecting that something is going to be done as regard giving the mandate to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But I would like us quickly to look at one of the, I think, the 6 priority recommendation by the EU, one of which is the establishment of publicly accountable selection process, where the selection of the INEC members, citizens are going to be involved in that. Secondly, ensuring real-time publication and then access to the result. They also recommended greater protection of media practitioners, addressing discrimination against women, and then impunity against electoral offenders. These are some of the recommendations that the EU's report brought forward. Now, going forward, because you talked about them looking into the report, taking responsibility. We all agree that the point of change is that point where you take responsibility. How do you think, or what other ways do you think, beyond just quickly and swiftly responding and rejecting a report such as this, what do you expect that the federal government should do rather with these recommendations?
Let me address the issue of electoral violence. We saw on the social media, even in the public media, television and the rest, real time interviews conducted. These were not fake news. Real time. People that were beaten, voters that were harassed. Particularly in Lagos, which is the home base of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who is today, by the grace of God, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, you ask yourself, what measures have been taken to reverse the culture of impunity in terms of electoral violence? These things continue because the people who do them are not held to account. And why is it that the people who perform these acts of electoral brigandage are not called to account? It is simply because those people who are behind them are the ones who control the apparatus of the law to ensure that these people are called to account. So there is no transparency and justice in the process for demanding accountability from electoral offenders. And so long as that is not done, this cycle of violence, I say, painfully and sadly, will continue. So now we are how many months after the elections? How many people have been arrested for electoral violence during the last general elections?
I think there was a report by INEC saying that the Nigerian police force have submitted about 215 names of people that were engaged in electoral offences.
Let me tell you, some of these things, particularly criminal prosecution, you have to proceed with it within the shortest possible time, practicable time. The more this thing delays, the more the fire to demand accountability from these electoral offenders will die down. You know, Nigerians, our memories are very short. As the government continues, it becomes, who cares? Let them be. So, we want to see, if you have arrested them, you have the evidence, charge them to court. How many of them have been charged to court? Or is it the police now that has become the court where these people are prosecuted? You know, there have even been suggestions in the past that you should set up a commission for prosecution of electoral offenders, given the severity and the scale and the nature of embarrassment that Nigeria suffers because of these acts of electoral violence and thuggery. You know, because now, let me just give you a slight picture. Hitherto, when there was no issue of electronic transmission, people believe that, look, you can just steal a ballot and then you go and thumbprint somewhere and bring it. So that was the kind of thing we're seeing. But the trend that emerged in the last elections this year were a question of intimidating voters not to come to the polling, beating up electoral officers, and the like. So these are things that are very glaring. In other climes, as we speak, some of them will have gone to prison. But, you know, because it is not important to the powers that be, nothing will be done. But because the determination of who should be in office is important, they will now make a law to say, look, all election petitions must be determined within 180 days of the filing of the petition, because it's important. All the apparatus of the judiciary, almost all, everything grounded almost to a standstill, because the issue of determination of you know, who should be in power. So the whole system is not functioning well. I think this is part of what the EU is saying. I stand to be corrected, but I have not read of any nation in the world where we have the scale of petitions in court, electoral litigations, as it happens in Nigeria. In fact, some lawyers call it the Nigerian Legal Olympic. Every year, every 4 years, general elections is an Olympic season for lawyers who are involved in election litigation. Everything goes there. When the hearing starts, from day to day. You look at the flaw that we're talking about. When you amend this Electoral Act, why didn't you amend it in such a way that once, because you are the one that organized the schedule, do it in such a way that all litigations are concluded before those who are claimed to have won, purported to have won, assume office. But you wait, the man is declared, you say go to court. And then he enters into the office. He alters everything. Like in the current situation at the federal level, the president has changed service chiefs, he's appointing ministers, he has access to the treasury. He can do a lot of things. Before long, maybe even be involved in appointment of superior court judges where there are vacancies. Meanwhile, his office is being contested. What is the justification for that kind of system in the world? You look at the Electoral Act. Electoral Act puts the burden on the petitioner to prove that the election was not properly conducted.
Instead of the system.
And you have 21 days after the election to put all your facts together. Those facts are not primarily within your own custody. Those facts are facts within the custody of INEC. They will dribble you, and you pay through the nose sometimes before those documents are availed. And you are struggling to beat the 21 days deadline. You file the petition, and then the respondents now, the winner, is laid back. Is waiting to see what facts and whether those facts that you are trying to prove is in compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act, particularly the grounds for bringing an election petition. Now, what happens is that there is a natural alliance between INEC and the person who won, the other respondents. Because INEC is interested in showing that what he did was correct.
That's true.
So he teams up with the person who won to defend the election. You are not the custodian of this. Now look at what we are saying now. You federal government, you say, oh, EU are liars. They are biased. Your own INEC witness went to the Prudential Appeal Tribunal and said only 30% of electronically generated this thing was transmitted to the portal. What happened to the 70%? And what happened to the expectation of Nigerians? These are the kind of things that should make us to begin to think. Is it morally correct that we spend so much money on elections every 4 years and we get this kind of results? Even the process for the appointment of INEC, because they alluded to that in that report.
Yes.
Yeah, in section 153 of the Constitution. The INEC is part of the federal executive bodies. The INEC members, resident electoral commissioners, and the other officials are the other 12 officials. These people are appointed on the recommendations of the president. And say, oh, the people to be appointed should be non-partisan. There should be men and women of integrity. Who defines who is non-partisan? Now you see, during the Buhari administration, he appointed his fellow brother from the north, who is a Muslim, to preside over an election that should have a semblance of independence. So the National Assembly under him was, Oga, whatever you say, we are with you. These names are brought. Civil society organizations and groups protest and say, oh, this man is a member of your party. They will still push. In fact, there was a case of one Larota Onoche. I think she was a media aide also to the president, former president. They kept pushing this woman, who is so partisan, a spokesperson for the former president, to become a member of a commissioner, INEC commissioner in Delta State. It's a shame. So these are the kind of things that are completely indefensible.
But doctor, do you have hope, looking at the fact that the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal have admitted the EU's report as an evidence against the claim by Atiku and the PDP of the emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Does this give you hope? Because I've seen situations where a lot of Nigerians kept applauding the EU's report, saying, oh, this is the reflection of what actually happened, what Nigerians witnessed at the February 25th elections, the violence, the impunity, the rancors, the beatings, the harassment, the intimidation, all of these, the weaknesses of the law, people doing things and getting away with it, the operational failures, irregularities, all of that. Nigerians related to it and they applauded the report. While on the other side, we saw how that some APC supporters toured the part of the street holding placards saying, no, we don't want this EU's report. That is not a reflection of what happened. The election was free, fair, credible, just like Dele Alake, the special advisor to the president on special duties, communication and strategy, said that it is the best organized since 1999. Now, looking at the fact that the court, the Presidential Election Tribunal admitting these as evidence, does it give hope that something is going to come out from it?
Yeah, well, let me say, talking about hope, I think as Nigerians, we must never give up on our country, because we don't have any other country but Nigeria. And some of us are not keen on going out anywhere. Even if I want to go out, I'm too old now to go anywhere. So we will never give up on Nigeria. Talking about the role of INEC, we must say, of course, that they did their best, given the challenges and the scale of the election they had to organize. I give that to them. They did their best. Commendable effort. There are certain things that were not within the control of INEC. For example, policing and security for the smooth conduct of the elections is not within their control. The politicians who have a made-up mind to overreach the system, no matter what is done, to ensure credibility, they are not within the control of INEC. With their supporters, there are some people who have a predetermined mind that, look, we give or take, whether by hook or by crook, we must emerge. Those who will corner presiding officers or returning officers or collation officers to doctor results at the last minute, to turn the tables. INEC has no control over such people. So we give it to INEC that they have done their best. They have tried. Sincerely, they have tried. But where they have failed, I think it's part of responsibility of leadership for them to admit that in so area we failed, and this is why we failed, and it should not happen next time, because INEC is an institution. Now, talking about the EU report, of course, as it is with politics, there are always two sides. Mr. A says yes, Mr. B says no. But there must always be an arbiter. And the judiciary is an arbiter. Now, even from what I've explained to you, you know that proof by election petition to say an election was not conducted in substantial compliance with the Electoral Act, or that so person was not returned by reason of the majority of lawful votes cast, is always a Herculean task, given the provisions of the Electoral Act. And the EU report, you see, the interesting thing with election litigation is that election litigations are regarded as sui generis. It's a special, unique procedure, unlike other litigation procedures. The way and manner that documents are tendered and are admitted in election petitions tribunal are unique, and you must follow the provisions, comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act. As to relevance and materiality, whether those documents are pleaded, and then of course, what are you tendering those documents to prove? And I dare say that the EU report on its own may not give you a verdict until given a combination of other facts, of other documents. So it's not enough to say, oh, because EU report is tendered, then the court say, oh, because of this EU report. The EU report also will be subjected to such light of cross-examination and scrutiny by the respondents who are defending the election. The court will also look at it and see what value can we place on it. So that becomes entirely a matter for judicial determination, which we cannot speak on now because the matter is sub judice. Okay, but again, I think it is good that every fact that the court needs to make an informed and reasoned decision should be placed before, because that report is just like any other fact to show that, look, these elections are flawed. But whether with a combination and aggregate of all the other facts and the law, you could actually establish that, look, the election should not stand. It's a different matter altogether.
Well, still talking about systemic weaknesses, we saw how that the Labour Party closed its case, PDP as well, and then APC also closed its case. INEC actually promised to bring about 2 witnesses, but at the end of the day presented one, even though we saw that the case was adjourned because on Monday the INEC witness didn't show up, but later on showed up like after it was adjourned and actually admitted to having technical glitches. Now, I know that if we want to develop this country, if we want Nigeria to grow, we have to speak the truth. And you talked about the fact that we cannot be pessimistic. We have to be hopeful. We have to be optimistic, because Nigeria is our country. We don't have any country outside of this. But of concern is the fact that there are a lot of people that don't speak truth to power. They hide under sycophancy just to get for what they are going to get, actually. And that is why no matter what is happening, they will never speak to power. They will rather hide under that umbrella of sycophancy, hailing, and all of that. We still have more elections. There are elections at state level to be conducted and all of that. What do you think, now speaking to Nigerians, because the process, like we kept talking about the process, if the process is not fixed, if the system is not fixed, then at the end of the day, you will not expect leaders emerging that are going to look into the welfare of the citizens in general. And if we have a part to play, what should Nigerians do? Because beyond system, we also have our own part to play as citizens. There are a lot of people that have had saying, oh, I've given up on this country, I will never vote again, I will not even participate. They have dashed their hopes away. What can be done?
Well, you see, talking about INEC witnesses, you know, again, that is strictly a matter of law. If the listed 2 witnesses to be called, it is up to them, based on the electoral laws and the rules of court, to call one or not to call any witness at all. They are entitled to do that. Okay? The only difference, perhaps, is if one of the petitioners or any of the petitioners had asked an INEC staff to come to court, either to produce documents or to give evidence in relation to certain aspects of the petition. The INEC staff is not at liberty to decline, because it's coming based on a subpoena, which is a command from the court for him to appear. And if he fails to appear, there will be consequences. But if it's INEC that is doing his own case, anchored by their lawyer, and they say they are calling 2 witnesses, and in the end, they say, okay, well, instead of 2, we go with 1. That is perfectly legitimate in the eyes of the law. They may even decide not to call and say, well, the petitioners have not even said anything requiring our needing us to come to put up a defense. We place our case, rely on the case that the petitioners have made in saying that they have no case. So these things happen. But you see, the beauty of it is that when the witness came, okay, he told the court what actually happened, particularly the aspect of this electronic transmission of results. It came out clear, and Nigerians can understand, oh, this is what happened. So the whole idea too of going to court is for Nigerians to know what happened, and to see, oh, we want to, through the judiciary, we can have a correctional process. Because you see, the pain is that when people who were not elected, or who are not elected by a majority of lawful votes cast, and when the elections are not conducted in some substantial compliance with the Electoral Act, that government will not have legitimacy. And that was what Yar'Adua recognized. That, look, we are here standing on one leg. The process that brought us in is flawed. And the best thing we can do is to see how to introduce changes to make this process better. So it is a moral burden on the government. Let me put it, they have a duty, a responsibility, if you like, I can even say constitutional responsibility to ensure that the electoral processes are improved upon. If other, of course, you can't have a completely perfect system that is devoid of some glitches here and there. But the scale of the glitches and the failure is monumental and is a national embarrassment. It is of such a scale that will discourage those people who came in to vote for the first time from coming back again. Vote our party. So, but like I said, we need to keep on. Civil society has a role to play because the government is our government. We can't leave it out there to anybody. It is the government of the people. Civil society must be involved. In our small groups, we must tell ourselves that this is how Nigeria must grow. You know, within your own sphere of influence as a leader, there are people that are under your, who defer to you. Tell them, look, this is what we need to do. And we must continue to demand accountability from the government. Some people kept on pressing, mounting pressure before the 2022 Electoral Act was passed into law. And that is the spirit. So, we are not getting it now, right as it were, but tomorrow it could be better.
Indeed, it could be better if collectively we put our heads together to do the needful. And still talking about election and emergence of leaders, we saw how that the 10th National Assembly, actually the Senate President announced the principal officers. With a lot of power tussle have been going on at the 10th National Assembly. After the inauguration, we saw how that the Senate President Godswill Akpabio was talking about the fact, oh, this is an uncommon National Assembly, a lot of expectations and all of that. And just within the week, principal officers emerged. They were announced, and Godswill Akpabio on Tuesday officially introduced the principal officers of Opeyemi Bamidele as the Senate leader, Dave Umahi as deputy Senate leader, Ali Ndume, the chief whip. We have Lola Shiru, the deputy chief whip, and then Simon Davo Matcom, PDP minority leader, Oyewumi as a PDP deputy minority leader, Darlington Wakocha as LP minority whip, and then Rufai Hanga as NNPP deputy minority whip. There were a lot of reactions to the announcement of these principal officers, but I would like to get your view on this emergence. But before you respond to that, I would like us to just go on a quick break so that when we return, our phone lines will be open for callers to call in and make their contribution. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
us, and in case you're just joining us, this is National Talk on ECWA Television International. We have been discussing the EU's report, as well as the emergence of principal officers of the 10th National Assembly. And I've been doing this with Dr. Okwori. Great analysis so far, sir. Quickly about the 10th National Assembly and then the emergence of the principal officers. Of course, all these have to be in place for them to take up responsibility and all of that. But the emergence of these officers have generated a lot of reaction. We saw how that the APC leadership chaired by Abdullahi Adamu says that this does not represent our stand. We are not even aware of this. The National Working Committee, he spoke on behalf of them. That was just after the progressive governors meeting. Even though some members of the National Working Committee of the APC begged to differ from Abdullahi Adamu's point of view. And again, even before the announcement, PDP also said, oh, we heard that names are about to be announced. Nigerians should disregard those names because they are still consulting as the major opposition party combined with other minority parties at the National Assembly. They are more than the ruling All Progressive Party. So names should be disregarded, while some people are celebrating congratulatory message trooping in, and the Senate President Godswill Akpabio charging the lawmakers to focus on their responsibilities and all of that. These are all reactions that trail the announcements. I just want to get your views on these positions.
Okay, thank you. My personal view is that the hula baloo about the emergence of principal officers of the 10th National Assembly to a large extent is unnecessary controversy. And it tells me, and other Nigerians perhaps, that our political parties are yet to get it right in terms of the proper way of doing things and governance. The way the process was managed, in my view, leaves much to be desired. I come particularly from the angle of how even the principal officers, that is the Senate, the core, the Senate President, the Speaker, the gentleman sitting in Aso Rock determined who should sit there as National Assembly. And that to me...
I think we have a caller. Hello, good evening. I think we lost that call. Please call us back, and when you call us, kindly move away from your TV set. You can go on with your contribution.
Yeah, you see, now, from Aso Rock, you are appointing principal officers. What it means is that when the business of legislation is on, the independence, because the Nigerian Constitution is the bedrock, one of the pillars or the principles of this constitution, which is a presidential constitution, is that there is separation of powers between the three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Now, when this kind of, permit me to use a pedestrian word, pali-pali begins to happen between the incoming National Assembly and the executive, Nigerians will become worried. Of course, we saw what happened in the immediate past, the 9th National Assembly. They were just a yes-man assembly. Oga, whatever law you bring, we'll sign it. Whatever law you are looking for, we'll approve it. Did it help governance? Their supporters will say yes. But other Nigerians will say, look, the checks and balances that are needed may not be optimized in that kind of arrangement. So I'm disappointed. So why not sit down? Even if you are going to do such a thing, I mean, go to your caucus and discuss on in your own small groups in the National Assembly. Not that you go to Aso Rock and then Aso Rock say, this is the one. go and ensure that they emerge. So these people who see themselves as beneficiaries of the generosity of the executive will kowtow to the demands in terms of budget approval, in terms of even the kind of legislations that will be made. Who will speak for Nigerians? Because as it is now, Labour has lost its voice. Labour wants to protest. The court will come and say injunction.
Yeah.
Keep quiet. National Assembly is a compliant National Assembly. So this is not the idea. Of course, you could say, oh, these are preferred candidates. Okay, you could say that. Well, but the way immediately the election was done, you are now going back to your master to pay homage. So, and then on top of that now, the other leaders from the other political parties are emerged. And then as they are emerging, you are hearing discordant tones from the same political party, which shows that the APC itself is in complete disarray. So, this is the process of bargain, negotiation, and discussion. And legislative horse trading. But what happened this time around was such that every armchair commentator got involved in the determination of who should become Senate president. Some of them were even moving around. Even House of Reps, they're going around states campaigning. What should be the business of members in the National Assembly? They were going around government houses campaigning. So it's depressing to me, what we are seeing.
Indeed, the process that brings leaders must actually be excellent, looking at what they are going to be doing there, talking about policies, talking about enactment of laws. Nigerians can not all be at the National Assembly, and that is why we have the representative system of governance, and why people have to elect people to go and stand in for them. The conversation now, I think, should be about national interest, should be about improving the welfare of Nigerians, even as much as
okay. I
think we have a caller.
Go
on, please.
Issue of the glitch, the claimed glitch. INEC said, I think that INEC owed Nigeria an apology. They really need to explain to Nigerians, because during the elections, both the National Assembly and the presidential election happened simultaneously. And how could that of the National Assembly go through and that of the presidency didn't go through? So they need to explain to us what really happened. Because if there is a glitch, it should also happen on the two elections, both the National Assembly and that of the president shouldn't go through. If there is a glitch. If actually it was a glitch. So it was a delay. To me, and every other Nigerians, I believe, believes that it was a deliberate act. It was a deliberate act. Only those who are having sympathies for APC or so, we say, there was a glitch. But there was no glitch. They explain to us what really happened. That's my contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling. And then quickly, Doctor, drawing by your explanation, the power tussle, the process that brought even the Senate President, the Speaker, and all of that, are you worried about the leadership that is going to come out of these leaders that have finally emerged?
Well, what I will say is that they need to sit up, because all eyes are on them. Nigerians will not accept excuses from them. There's a lot of suffering in the land. And the legislature has to take a step to ensure that working, doing its own part, working well, standing on his feet, keeping an eye on what the executive is doing, that deliverance of the fruits of democracy in terms of delivery, we have to see it. There must be that delivery. Many Nigerians today go to bed hungry. They wake up in the morning, they don't know what to eat. The situation has become so bad that you don't even know who to ask money. Because almost everybody has become poor. People have vehicles they can't drive. You go to sleep on an empty stomach. People fall sick, they have no money to go to the hospitals. And it's become bad. Public transportation. Transportation is a key aspect of daily life. People cannot move. You have cars, you can't fuel it. You look at the NEPA bills. For some families, if you are going to use your light, your salary cannot pay your NEPA bill in a year. Now, the government came and said, oh, fuel subsidy removed. Ordinary citizens do not care about the technicalities involved in subsidy. What they want is that fuel should be available and affordable. Inflation has skyrocketed. The National Assembly should sit up and demand accountability from the federal government. This thing that is happening, we are the representatives of the people. Like you, in the House of Reps. You were elected as representatives of the people. The House of Reps is the house of the people. Based on the principle of proportional representation, you didn't go to Abuja to become an Abuja politician. You left, we are now in Just North and Basa constituency to go to the National Assembly to speak for the people of Just North and Basa constituency. These legislators must, beyond politics, wake up to their responsibilities. So these are the things we expect them to. All this one, they didn't consult us. A party, if you as a party has not managed your own domestic affair properly as a political party, don't rub it on the faces of Nigerians. Because you see, what it shows actually is that even the politicians, members of the same APC, do not trust themselves. So if you as politicians in the same political party do not even trust yourself, and you do not even trust your leadership selection process, how do you expect Nigerians to trust you?
We have a caller. Okay. Go ahead.
In Nigeria, as a nation, it is really, really sad. Sometimes you wonder where to even begin from. One challenge we have as a people is that a lot of our leaders are so nearsighted that they don't know, or they don't seem to see the effect of the things that is awaiting, or that they are orchestrating with their own hands. The thing is that wherever there is injustice, it's just a matter of time before anarchy comes into play. That's just the truth. They don't know that everything you do is like a ripple effect. So what goes round keeps coming round. It's just a matter of time. Even their own supporters, with time, will begin to revolt against them. That's what they don't seem to be seeing. I mean, how can you have an election like this, and an independent body is coming in to give an opinion, an objective opinion, and all you're seeing is what you will benefit from it, instead of owning up and say, okay, the system had a problem, we'll do something to make it better. No, you don't care. All you care about is what you will benefit. And sometimes I'm also concerned about the followership. There are people who don't follow these politicians, hook, line, and sinker. They don't even think. And sometimes I even ask the question, are we sure our leaders are not even the best of us? Because some of the things that you see on the street, sometimes you see people arguing for these people, and they are also still suffering from the effect of some of the decisions and policy taken by these politicians. So I think there is need for general overhaul. I mean, serious sensitization of Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians need to learn to walk so that they don't have to be depending on politicians to give them this meal. A lot of Nigerians need to understand that our future and the future of our children and the future of our grandchildren are at stake, so that we will wake up, and the sooner we wake up, the better for us.
Thank you so much.
So the whole system is just messed up. Sincerely speaking, it's a sad situation. I'm just praying and hoping that we will wake up from our sleep. All of us as Nigerians, including the followership and the leadership, we will wake up and ensure that this whole madness does not continue. And then, in the face of all this hopelessness, we must not give up hope. I see a lot of young people beginning to say they are tired, they are not going to vote again. No, this is not the time to give up. We must stay focused and keep hoping and keep doing the things that we need to do in our little corner until Nigeria begins to work, because this is the home we have.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Kwapio, for calling. We really appreciate it. Our time is actually fast spent, Doctor. In just a minute, can I just get your final thoughts?
Well, Nigeria is a huge prayer project. And beyond praying, like the last caller said, we all have a responsibility to make Nigeria work. And in your little corner, what are you doing? Leadership is everything. And these are leaders. I think there's a lot of expectation on them. And like he said, if care is not taken the way we are going, they will bite more than they can chew. So they should not push their luck too far, because a hungry man is an angry man. When people get to a point of desperation, that life does not mean anything to them, then it's dangerous. And gradually people are being pushed to the brink, pushed to the wall. So we must inspire our people and give them hope that this democracy will work. And that those who are there are not there for themselves, they are there for the people.
Indeed, indeed.
So I think that will be my last comment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Arome Moses Okori, for creating time to speak with us. Great analysis. And to our viewers out there, that's the much we'll take on today's edition of National Talk. Do know that to move this country forward, we must speak the truth to power. And governance is about improving the lives of the people, and that is what service is all about, heart to the people. Do remember that you need to be kind to one another. Until we come your way next week with another edition on National Talk, remain blessed.